She wanted an open marriage. So I opened the door and let her walk out first, straight into the freedom she thought would feel like love. Laura and I had been together almost 4 years, married for less than 2. I was an engineer, practical, routine-oriented, the type who double-checks the stove before bed. Laura was a freelance photographer, impulsive in the way people who chase sunsets for a living tend to be. We fit, or at least I thought we did, logic and light, structure and spontaneity. That night we were having dinner at our favorite place, a small Italian restaurant with low lighting and linen napkins folded too neatly. Halfway through her glass of wine, she set it down and said, very casually, "I want our marriage to be open." I froze, fork suspended midair. She watched me with that soft, almost rehearsed expression people use when they know they're about to hurt you but think honesty will make it noble. "It's not about cheating," she said. "It's about growth. I want freedom." She said it louder than necessary. A couple at the next table looked over. Someone chuckled under their breath. And as my pasta cooled and the waiter pretended not to hear, I realized something brutal. Humiliation echoes longer than heartbreak ever does. A few days later, Laura posted a story. Freedom is the highest form of love. A half-finished glass of wine in her hand, sunset glow behind her. Hashtags lined up like confetti. Hashtag open marriage, hashtag growth, hashtag honesty. My coworkers saw it before I did. Monday morning, someone in the break room whistled as I poured coffee. "So, Mark, trying out the new trend? Open marriage?" Laughter. The kind that sounds friendly but smells of pity. I smiled like it didn't sting. "Guess I missed the memo," I said, pretending it was a joke. That night, when she came home humming, I asked if we could talk. She sat cross-legged on the couch, wearing that new confidence like perfume. "This isn't about cheating," she said again. "It's about redefining love." She'd been reading books, following influencers with names like Conscious Couple Living and the Freedom Project. She talked about energy, autonomy, the outdated constraints of ownership. I asked, "And if I don't want that?" She smiled, small, clinical. "Then you're scared. Or codependent." She said it like a therapist diagnosing a patient, not a wife speaking to a husband. Over the next week, I watched our marriage turn into a TED Talk. Every dinner was a lecture. Every silence was data. She quoted podcasts about evolutionary psychology, about how jealousy was a social construct from agrarian economies. Meanwhile, I was the exhibit, the resistant husband. She started dressing differently. Looser shirts, bolder lipstick. She began networking at art openings, wine tastings, gallery shows. Nights stretched longer. Texts got shorter. Heading to a rooftop shoot. Don't wait up. Client dinner went late. Battery dying, talk tomorrow. Each message sounded like a door clicking shut. Then one Friday she didn't come home. No text. No call. Nothing. I stayed awake until 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, listening to the hollow quiet of a shared apartment that suddenly felt rented by strangers. At 7 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Sorry, photo shoot ran late. Crashed at Maya's." No apology. No warmth. Just logistics. Later that day, I went to grab my charger from her camera bag. Her phone lit up. Face ID didn't block notifications. A thumbnail preview popped up in her gallery. Her arm around some guy at a crowded house party. His face close, too close. The photo had that unguarded intimacy you can't fake. The kind people take when they forget someone else might ever see it. It wasn't theory anymore. It was practice. I didn't confront her that morning. I went to work, answered emails, attended meetings like a ghost wearing my face. That evening, when she came home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, she kissed my cheek and said, "You seem tense." "Tired," I said. She smiled. "You should meditate more. Helps with control issues." That night she fell asleep scrolling through a forum titled Ethical Non-Monogamy for Beginners. I stared at the ceiling again, wondering when love had become a PowerPoint presentation. On Sunday, she hosted what she called a connection dinner. 6 people from her new community. I played host, poured wine, smiled at the right times. One guy, tall with a sleeve tattoo, kept touching her arm when he laughed. She didn't pull away. During dessert, The tattooed guy leaned toward me and said, "Man, it's awesome you're both so evolved. Most guys couldn't handle sharing." I gripped my glass hard enough to hear it creak. After everyone left, Laura sighed happily. "See? That was healthy. That's how adults do relationships, with transparency." I nodded, but in my head I heard a quieter word. Exposure. That night, I backed up all our shared photos to an external drive. Just habit, I told myself. Engineers like redundancies. But truthfully, it felt like I was archiving the remains of a civilization already fallen. The next morning, she left early for another shoot. I stood in the kitchen, looking at her half-empty coffee cup, lipstick print on the rim, phone buzzing with new notifications. The same phrase from her story floated through my mind. Freedom is the highest form of love. Maybe, but sometimes freedom is just another name for leaving. Confrontations with Laura were like walking into a courtroom where she was both prosecutor and jury. Every word I said became evidence against me. But after weeks of her late nights and distant mornings, I reached my breaking point. I suggested we talk, not argue, just talk, at a friend's birthday dinner. Neutral ground, public setting, maybe she'd keep things calm. I miscalculated. Halfway through the night, I leaned over and said quietly, "Laura, can we go outside for a minute?" She looked at me with that bright, performative smile, the one she used for photo shoots, and said loudly, "Why?" "Afraid I'll flirt too much." A few heads turned. I lowered my voice. "Please, just 5 minutes." That was the moment she decided this would be theater. She pushed her chair back and stood, wine glass in hand like a prop. "You know what your problem is, Mark? You can't handle a woman who loves without ownership." The music didn't even have time to fade before the room went silent. 20 people stared. Someone awkwardly laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. "Laura, no. You think love means control. You want to own me, monitor me, fix me. But I'm not a project, Mark. I'm a person." I could feel the heat creeping up my neck. My fingers clenched around my drink, condensation running down onto my hand. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I stood there, rooted in place, watching the woman I married turn our private fracture into a public performance. When the silence became unbearable, I whispered, "We'll talk at home." She smirked, victorious, as if I'd just admitted defeat. "You don't get it," she said, softer now, to the entire table. "He doesn't want a partner. He wants property." That line landed like applause in her mind. She sat down, took a sip of wine, and laughed at something someone said to change the subject. I left before the cake. At home, she was calm again, almost gentle. "You embarrassed yourself tonight," she said, slipping off her heels. "I asked you for a conversation. You chose a scene," she replied, walking into the kitchen. She poured another glass of wine and leaned against the counter. Like this was just another debate to win. "You either accept this or we're done." Her tone was so casual it almost didn't register. "Then we're done," I said. For the first time all night, she looked genuinely startled. Then came the smirk, the same one she wore when she got a free dessert by complimenting a waiter. "You'll regret this. Guys like you always beg to come back." I didn't answer. She walked past me, still holding her wine, and started pulling clothes from the closet. 15 minutes later, her suitcase was by the door. Before bed, I heard her in the living room on a call, laughing, saying, "Yeah, it's official. He couldn't handle it." Then silence. The door clicked shut at 1:13 a.m. By morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. "Did you see Laura's post?" She'd uploaded a carousel of photos. The last one stopped me cold. Her and the same guy from that party, arms around each other, half-drunk smiles under string lights. Caption: "Finally free. Growth, comfort." The comments were an avalanche of validation. "Yes, Queen Crown. So proud of you for choosing yourself. Love isn't a cage." I stared at my screen until the letters blurred. It wasn't heartbreak I felt. It was disbelief at how fast someone could rewrite the story of your life into a caption. Later that day, my boss called me into his office. "Rough weekend?" he asked gently. Someone sent me that post. I'm sorry, man. Hope you're okay. Even at work, my marriage had become public entertainment. That night, I went through our apartment collecting the debris she'd left behind. A hair tie on the bathroom sink, her coffee mug on the counter, a Polaroid of us taped to the fridge. I dropped them all into a box and left it by the door. When I opened her Instagram again, she'd already changed her bio. Photographer, storyteller, believer in freedom and truth. It had taken her less than 12 hours to erase me. But the internet, like love, never forgets quietly. In the following days, people began tagging me in comments. Some mocking, some pitying. One mutual friend messaged, "She's saying you were controlling. Is that true?" That's when I realized the truth wasn't enough anymore. She'd gone public, and I'd just become the villain in her version. I didn't know it then, but that post was only the beginning of her campaign. The public breakdown was complete, but the real collapse, hers and mine, was still coming. The nightmare didn't arrive as a storm. It came like a slow leak, quiet, steady, impossible to ignore. The first crack was financial. We'd been planning a beach renewal ceremony for our 2-year anniversary. Something she'd insisted on after reading that rituals reinforce emotional evolution. There was a deposit on a small venue in Galveston, a photographer, and a catering company she found through a friend of a friend who specialized in ethical seafood. Canceling everything took an afternoon of polite apologies and bank calls. Out of the $2,200 I'd prepaid, I managed to recover about $400. The rest gone. When I texted Laura about splitting the loss, she replied instantly, "I didn't make you sign anything. You're just too controlling." That was her favorite word now, controlling. It covered every disagreement, every boundary, every attempt at logic. The next day, her mother called mine. I only heard one side of the conversation. My mom standing in the kitchen holding the phone like it was burning her hand. "Yes, Diane, I'm aware. Yes, it's very sad. No, my son didn't forbid her from anything." Well, being yourself doesn't mean betraying someone. That line, being yourself doesn't mean betraying someone, stuck in my head all week. It was the first time I'd heard someone else say it out loud, and somehow it hurt more than anything Laura had posted. At work, whispers began trailing me like static. I caught fragments in hallways, half-laughs in the break room. "Did you see her Medium article? She called it the courage to unchain love." One coworker tried to be kind. "Hey man, if you ever want to talk, I've been through a breakup too." But this wasn't a breakup. This was a rebranding, my ex-wife turning our implosion into content. Her Instagram became a manifesto. Every post was an essay about toxic monogamy, patriarchal conditioning, and healing through truth. One caption read, "Some men mistake loyalty for ownership. Some women mistake guilt for love. I chose evolution." Each like felt like another nail in the coffin of what used to be our marriage. Friends began picking sides quietly. The creative ones, photographers, writers, yoga instructors, drifted toward her orbit, sharing her posts with fire emojis. My circle shrank down to 3 people who didn't buy the performance. My sister, Claire, called one evening. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "No, you're surviving." "That's not the same." She hesitated. "She's posting about you, you know?" "I know." "Want me to respond?" "No. Let her burn her energy. I'll keep mine." It sounded stoic at the time, but mostly I was just numb. A week later, Laura emailed me. The subject line, "Financial boundaries after separation." Inside, a 6-paragraph note about how she felt entitled to partial reimbursement for emotional labor during our marriage. She actually attached a spreadsheet, color-coded, hours of support provided, creative brainstorming, household logistics, total $7,400. At the bottom, she'd written, "This is a symbolic gesture of accountability, but I would appreciate it if you honored it financially." I laughed out loud. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer, the same one who helped me close on our house, and asked if emotional labor was a taxable event. His reply, "Only if you invoice God." Still, her campaign gained momentum. She did a podcast interview about leaving possessive relationships. I didn't listen, but someone from college texted, "Dude, she's talking about you by name." I started avoiding social media altogether, but the digital smoke followed me everywhere. My LinkedIn suggested related creators, and her profile appeared, Laura Jameson, visual storyteller and relationship educator. Her bio now read, helping others break free from outdated love models. That night, sitting alone in the half-empty apartment, I noticed how quiet it was. No late-night editing on her laptop. No humming while she developed film. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the clock ticking too loudly. Grief is strange. It doesn't just come from love lost, but from identity dissolved. I wasn't Mark and Laura anymore. I was just Mark, the man who got left for enlightenment. Then came the next hit. The catering company emailed me. Apparently, Laura had rebooked them for an upcoming retreat celebrating feminine rebirth. The same date as our canceled ceremony. They thought I was still part of it and wanted to confirm the final payment. I stared at the screen, reread it twice, then simply replied, "Wrong Mark." That night I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through her page despite myself. Photos of ocean waves, hands in sand, women in flowing dresses. In the comments, people called her brave, radiant, revolutionary. The same woman who'd once whispered, "I'll always choose you," was now selling t-shirts that said, "Choose yourself first." Freedom had a brand, and I was its uncredited origin story. But behind the performance, I began to notice something odd. Small inconsistencies. She started posting more erratically. Long captions turned defensive. She argued with strangers in the comments. The confidence that once felt unshakable began to look brittle. And that's when I realized something I hadn't before. Her freedom wasn't costing just me anymore. It was beginning to cost her, too. 2 months passed. Silence became routine. My phone no longer vibrated with late-night arguments or public apologies wrapped in hashtags. I had rebuilt small habits. Morning runs, coffee before work, dinner without a side of dread. The absence of her voice was strange at first, then strangely soothing. Then, one gray Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed. "Laura, can we talk?" I stared at the message for a full minute. The part of me that still remembered our good days wanted to ask why now. The rest of me already knew. People don't reach out when they've grown. They reach out when their new world collapses. We met the next day at a cafe we used to visit back when things were still soft and unfiltered. She arrived late, wearing oversized sunglasses and a sweater that looked borrowed. When she took the glasses off, her eyes were red-rimmed. Not from makeup this time, but from exhaustion. "I made a mistake," she said, before I could even sit down. That freedom felt empty. She talked fast, like someone trying to outrun guilt. The guy from the photos, the so-called embodiment of openness, had disappeared 2 weeks after moving in with her. Turns out he'd been exploring connections with 2 other women from the same circle. The community that once praised her posts now treated her like a pariah. "It was supposed to be love without ownership," she said, stirring her latte without drinking it. But it felt more like love without gravity. Everything just floated away. I listened quietly, tracing the rim of my cup. Part of me wanted to comfort her. The other part remembered standing at that birthday party while she dismantled my dignity for an audience. "I thought I was evolving," she continued, "but it turns out I was just running. From myself, from the boredom, from the idea of being ordinary." I didn't interrupt. She looked at me the way people look at something familiar after a long nightmare, like home, or at least something that resembles it. "Maybe we could try again?" she asked finally, voice breaking. "I can change." I took a breath. The cafe hummed around us. Cups clinking, milk frothing. A life continuing regardless of our mess. "No, Laura," I said softly. "You don't want me. You want the comfort you lost." She blinked hard, eyes glistening. "After everything, that's it?" I thought about the months of being mocked online, of canceling deposits, of watching her redefine betrayal as bravery. I thought about the quiet I'd found since she left. "You wanted open doors," I said. "I just opened one." Her composure cracked then. She looked down, wiping under her eyes with a napkin already soaked in mascara. For a second, I almost reached out. But pity isn't the same as love. It just feels similar when you're tired. She stood, adjusting her sweater like armor. "You're colder than I remember," she whispered. Maybe I just stopped mistaking silence for warmth. She left without finishing her drink. I watched her walk out into the drizzle, head bowed, phone already in hand, probably typing another story to explain this ending. When she disappeared around the corner, I looked at the half-finished latte she'd left behind. A gray swirl of foam drifted in the cup, slowly collapsing. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel anger or sadness, just peace. The kind that doesn't announce itself, doesn't ask to be posted or analyzed. Just quiet, earned peace. On the drive home, I passed a mural she once photographed. An ocean painted on a brick wall with the words, "Let it flow." Back then I thought it was cliché. Now it made sense. Some things you don't fight to keep. You just let them drift out to sea, and trust the tide to return what's meant to stay. 3 months later, I moved to San Antonio. Not far geographically, but emotionally it felt like another planet. New apartment, small but sunlit. New furniture I assembled myself, clean lines, no memories attached. I didn't bring anything from the old life except my tools and one coffee mug that still had a faint scratch from her ring. It reminded me that love leaves marks even after it leaves. I built a new routine, slow and deliberate. Early runs along the river walk before sunrise. Coffee with the same barista who learned my order without asking. Work, home, quiet dinners. No analysis. No emotional debates about the evolution of love. Just stillness. 2 weeks after settling in, I rescued a dog from a shelter. A nervous brown mutt with 2 big ears and a habit of sleeping half on my feet. I named him Finn. He didn't care about freedom or emotional labor spreadsheets. He just wanted company and walks. It was perfect. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I still scroll. Old reflex. Her name pops up from time to time, algorithmically resurrected like a ghost with good lighting. Her posts have evolved or devolved into philosophical fragments. True love never restricts. It releases. Boundless love is the only real kind. You can't lose what was never meant to be owned. Thousands of likes. Dozens of comments. People thanking her for her authenticity. I don't comment, don't react. I just scroll past with a small, quiet smile. Because she's right, love does release. She just never expected to be the one released. A friend from Austin texted me recently, "Hey man, saw Laura on some podcast about conscious uncoupling. She mentioned you, kind of." I told him not to worry. Let her build her brand. Everyone needs a story to live in. Mine just happens to be peaceful now. Some nights, when I cook, I still remember how she used to dance barefoot in the kitchen while chopping vegetables, humming half a melody. It doesn't hurt anymore. It's just a photograph in motion, something preserved but finished. I've learned that closure doesn't arrive with grand gestures or apologies. It comes in tiny, unnoticed moments, like realizing your plants are still alive even though you forgot to water them for a week. Like waking up and realizing you don't check your phone expecting a fight. Freedom, it turns out, isn't the absence of commitment. It's the absence of chaos. I'm not against open relationships. People should love however they can, honestly, transparently, responsibly. What I'm against is breaking people and calling it growth. Laura wanted an open marriage. And maybe, in a way, she got exactly what she asked for. Because in the end, I opened the door. Not to chase her. Not to win her back. But to let her walk first. Straight into the freedom she thought would feel like love. And as the door closed behind her, something unexpected happened. The noise stopped. The world, once filled with shouting, commentary, and digital applause, went quiet. And in that quiet, I rediscovered the steady rhythm of my own life. The kind that doesn't need validation, or hashtags, or witnesses. Sometimes, when Finn curls up beside me on the couch and the city hums softly outside, I think about how small the moment was that changed everything. One dinner, one sentence, one open door. It used to feel like the end of something sacred. Now it feels like the start of something simpler. I don't check her page anymore. I don't need to. She's out there searching for meaning in motion, while I found mine in stillness. In the end, she taught me something I never expected to learn. Love doesn't always grow by expanding outward. Sometimes it grows inward, quietly, when you stop reaching for what walked away. And maybe that's what freedom really is, not the right to wander, but the peace of finally standing still.